on blue side here, and then the Varus gets ripped as well. So AL here with a few choices of what they want to go for. With Xin Zhao open and available, they just say, yeah, you know what, you can pick that if you want to, but they take the Trundle away. And now I think, we saw this in the last series, maybe the Jarvan priority starts to rise a little bit. Maybe I think taking Trundle this early incentivizes you to maybe look towards one of those AP junglers if you'd like to. But instead, Weibo just deciding, we'll go with what's tried, what's true, and what's tested. And for Tian so far, it has been those aggressive playmaking junglers.
And Tian's going to say, yeah, so what? You have the stat checker king on the side of Trundle here. It's all about still trying to combo with Talia and set up those guaranteed seismic shove combos with the power of that 3 talent strike. And as long as you can, avoid having to face the Trundle directly, you can still make it happen. It just does. It does mean some of those 2v2s or the skirmish scenarios, Trundle will always be favored. And since the Trundle has now been locked in, anyone's legend has the freedom to lock in a blind top lane tank pick for Flandre here. And that does work in their favor since they're on blue side. And look, boom! Sion locked in, baby.
I mean, no Rumble, no Gwen available for either of these sides, so maybe get to see something maybe a little bit more geared toward bruiser capabilities with that tank, and the Ambessa is certainly the choice here that's been taken for Breed. I think one of our better Ambessa players from the LPL so far. But again, for me, this is a real litmus test for Weibo. What can they do versus a team that is going to be at the top of the standings? As we move into the second round of bans, bot lane picks still left to be up and available. I mean, with the Rakan ban again, it incentivizes that Braum pick. Maybe they're going to look to try and take that pick off the board and pair it up with a Lucian chance with Light. AL, though, they're probably going to want to ban away some of those AD carries, those hyper scalers or those big ticket AD carries that Light is going to want to take early on in this rotation.
Yep, good call on the Lucian. Would have played really nicely into the very aggressive early setup that Weibo really have. Ambessa's the only one that would like a little bit more time to scale on up on that 2-item spike with the Eclipse and Shojin. But the Kai'Sa being taken away as AL not necessarily committed to a full dive composition. They have really the makings of a decent front to back. You have some flexibility in being able to either kite or press forward with their advantage, but still the threat of that is enough to just take it away. Also, it is Hope. Hope has shown some very stellar Kai'Sa gameplay, especially in Split 2, so I think it's just a wise decision to take that off the board.
Yeah, I mean, Hope, honestly, on those mobility carries as well. Typically, he was known for having this really big pocket jinx as well, but actually, there was a Lucian game where he was schmoving on T1 as well, so, this is a pick that he can quite easily play on both sides, I would say. With the Alistar locked in, though, you can see already that Weibo, just as a composition, are very dive-centric, with Xin Zhao and Ambessa, now the Alistar getting locked in. So something to provide you some semblance of safety for Hope is always going to go well, and I feel like he's one of the few AD carries who will still happily lock in this Corki and take it down to that bot side and really have a good showing on it as well. It does tend to fall off just a little bit. We've seen it be something that struggles a bit with matching damage late game, just because he is such a short range marksman. You do default to, oh well, if my rockets aren't dealing damage, I tend to struggle.
And I like the last lock-in for AL, seeing that the Alistar was picked blind for Weibo. You go for a Poppy. I was curious if they were going to go maybe in the channel route and look for Karma just to try and play disengage and strong shield setup, but the Poppy can block a lot of the dashes from the Ambessa, the Alistar, and the Xin. And Weibo Sivir for Light. They want to really accelerate and help further facilitate the ability for Weibo to just brute force and storm on in through AL's defenses with the power of that Sivir movement speed boost.
Yeah, it was Sivir or it was Jhin for me here. Like Jhin, again, another champion that synergizes really well with dive, but the Sivir getting locked in does give more opportunities for Weibo to get back into the fight. I'm thinking if you look at in particular the Keeper's Verdict, if somebody gets knocked away and then even if they've just got like a little bit of Sivir movement speed to keep them getting back into that fight a little bit sooner, that's something that we can probably look forward to and as just a little bit more of an advantage. But You know, we've got a relatively standard death ball composition on one side. We've got one that's a little bit more geared to diving on the other. And I think that for Weibo, they've got the burden of execution here. They're the ones who are going to have to pull that trigger, and it's going to be a bit harder for them to do that.
Especially when you have to face the eventual clock of a Scion getting beefier and beefier. Not really a lot of reliable ways to shred the armor unless you invest into some early Black Cleavers on your Bruisers, or Sivir is forced to go into an early Lord Dominic's regards here. But as we are getting ready to hit the Rift here, Rood, this is quite a big matchup. Anyone's Legend wants to get revenge. They want to bounce back with a win in their series score after their loss against BLG, and Weibo want to continue that dominance here in Split 3. Let's hit the Rift between Weibo and Anyone's Legend.
Nice.
Woo! Now, I believe we got Giles for both sides.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Okay, huge.
That's why I said nice. You know,
okay.
we got both.
Nice. Okay, well, that's good to hear. See, the first series, it was only BLG, but this time we got Giles for both sides on Anyone's Legend Weibo. This is very...
Oriana! Jump scare.
Now, Weibo knows something was up, but they drop a ward by the Raptor Camp bush and ensure that no further action will escalate into some messy fighting between the two teams here. No other fancy or aggressive level 1s. Taking a look at the Keystones, I don't think anything strange pops up here, Rood. Unsealed Spellbook coming in for both Kael and Crisp, so that just means that we're going to have some crazy smite scenarios, Rood.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I think at a certain point it was cool to begin with. Now I'm a little bit bored of it, but that's just a personal take. And you know, I liked it when junglers had to smite, and you know, I think that there is an extra layer of the game to it that it adds. So I'm not really too disappointed at all that it's a thing that exists, but. You can already see some very aggressive trades coming through down on the spot side. You'll see that Kael actually looks to trade when he's got that buckler ready so that he can act like a bit of a ranged unit. Now, it's worth saying that the fact that Alistair level 1 is able to get any semblance of prio is a bit of a mystery to me, but Light and Crisp have done a good job at just sort of body checking AL and making sure that they're the ones who are able to push for level 2 now the Alistair becomes a real champion, and they should be able to have relatively good control over this wave with a Sivir in their back pocket.
Yeah. I want to say that Chris just was able to find really good timings on when Hope was trying to evaporate most of the wave and just punted him away, and thereby diminishing his ability to control the wave. And anytime you are playing into Sivir, it can feel like a tall task to try and overcome it. Oh my gosh. Aggression from Kael. Ignite onto Light forces the barrier, but now he's got to be careful. Thankfully, that last buckler pickup gives him a little bit of an extra shield for sustain there. And already things are getting very spicy in this bot lane duo matchup.
Yeah, so double defensive summon is used here by Weibo as the heal and the barrier goes down. Kael there using a minion to taxi on top of Light, who didn't have the spell shield just yet, but Tarzan sniffing around on this bot side, thought about going for a little wrap, but didn't know where there was vision, decided that it wasn't worth spending the time and committing the resources to going for that play, but he's going to chomp down onto this Scryer's Bloom, spot that Tian is there, move up to that top side and attempt to secure that top side Scuttle Crab.
Yeah, it's a smart move from Tarzan, knowing that his bot lane doesn't have priority. So even though he could look for the gank, he probably knows that Tian was also playing the path towards the bottom side of the map, and that would be a losing 3v3. But now Tian has a full access to a 3v2 dive, uncontested by Tarzan as Kael flashed, wall slam into Chris. Light was the one that was taking the turret, but it's enough to defuse the dive.
Yeah, I mean, if the Sivir can't get there and do the DPS because she has to protect her own life, then unfortunately Weibo just don't have enough left in the tank to make it work. They are going to get this wave shoved, crashed, and then get a reset off of this. But Kael, you know, if he's doing his job, I would like to see him just sort of walk at Weibo here, try and stop that recall from coming through, and maybe try and use a little bit of that advantage that they got. Tarzan was able to walk in, get a little bit of vision down. Second Raptors hadn't spawned, so wasn't able to steal them away. But does get a ward down onto that pit. It's traded across both sides, and The second clears for both of our junglers are now going to begin, but importantly, it's worth pointing out that Tian has already taken a recall, got those items, whereas it still looks like Tarzan needs to find a timer to reset.
You'll probably try to do it after this wolf take. Should be able to hit level 5 off of it as well, so this will at least give Tarzan a little bit more gold to play with. Maybe he can look for a Phage back, if not a Sheen back or a Hearthbound Axe back. Just something that feels a little bit more of bigger sustenance. But that, as I say that, he's going to continue clearing towards the bottom side where a lot of his camps are going to be spawning in the Raptors and the Krug camp. So I don't know if this is something that Weibo Gaming can really punish on the top side of the map, because throughout all the aggression on the bot lane duo matchup, Roodood, Hope maintain all summoner spells. So this Corki is incredibly safe right now.
Yeah, and especially with the Poppy at their side as well, it's worth mentioning that Steadfast Presence, we've already seen, I think, is a really good anti-Xin Zhao and anti-Alistair tool. So there are plenty of things that can keep Sivir from getting people on top of her. Unfortunately, you know, for Weibo, they've not really been able to punish the Corki like it maybe thinks they, or like they maybe thought they could do. And it's worth saying as well that as we move a little bit later on into this game, you know, the power of Sivir is not to be understated. There will be a Talia at her side as well, so there's a couple of DPS threats, and I do value that as the game goes later, the Scion and the Trundle will begin to be able to just get churned through.
Speaking of the Scion, could be in trouble as Breathe already used the public execution to snag Flandre out of the decimating smash, but Tarzan might have arrived a little too late. He does have to watch his top laner fall, but should be able to at least clean back one onto Breathe as Flandre's trying to beat him down.
It's so close!
Passive, great flash from Tarzan, drops the aggro and takes a double kill for himself.
Oh, it's so close there, but Tarzan comes out on top, just clubs him around the head, picks up a double kill, and has a Scuttle Crab to win out on as well. Really solid fighting down on that bot side 2v2. Again, looked like it was going to be incredibly close, and that maybe there would have been a chance for Tian and Breathe to maybe come back into that fight. If they'd have just tried to kite out the Trundle and the Scion a little bit more, they could have potentially turned it back around in the 2 versus 1. But I want to point out, you know, that some of the points of this that made it tricky for Weibo to get out to safety. So first of all, really solid gank from the Weibo 2 versus 1 situation, right? They look at the positioning here, both looking to block the Scion so he can't just ulti away. But Flandre does so much work, and he gets the damage out from his Q as well. But look at this pillar from Tarzan, keeps Tian in place. It means that he has to fight his way out. The entire time, he's scrapping, he's getting wailed on by the Flandre zombie, and I think that probably does about 80% of Tian's HP, so that when the Trundle flashes and Tarzan gets in position, all he needs is one quick chomp and the Xin Zhao's gone.
I have never seen a flash in the alcove be placed so well that the vision game just completely mind destroyed Tian and Breathe in that moment, because he was just gone. They're like, well,
what do we do?
We don't have eyes on him. What do we do? We have to run from this Undead Scion passive, and then Tarzan waits for that chomp cooldown to come back off cooldown. Yoink, 1-2, bop bop, double kill. And now this Trundle had just based and fought them on that Phage power spike versus the 2 item components in Tian's pocket. Now he's got a Sheen, so he has full control over these grubs, and Weibo not going to even try to contest him there, will just opt in for the first dragon instead.
And I think that's something we've seen from the LPL as well, and maybe a lot of things internationally. Flandre is actually in trouble.
You know that he doesn't have flash, so the seismic shove, oh, nice buffer by the unstoppable onslaught to not get flicked by the combo. Okay, Flandre, I see you.
Yeah, it's great timing. It does mean that he burns his ulti once again, and I think that fortunately there's no real contest for neutral objectives, so not having an ult, not particularly going to be a problem for him, just means that he's got to play a little bit safer now, once again down on this bot side, and, you know, maybe, you know, find himself in a little bit of trouble. But what we are starting to see as well is that when these Trundles do get gold, is that they actually become, you know, big turret takers. I've seen, you know, numerous instances of Trundles moving into those side lanes with their solo laners in an effort to take those structures down, and when this Trundle has got a little bit of a cash injection already, there is an opportunity for AL to continue funneling gold into Tarzan. Heck, we've already seen a Trundle pentakill this year already, or this split already, from King Kanavi himself, so it's definitely worth mentioning that Trundles with gold can do a lot of things.
And sometimes even without the need for a lethal tempo keystone, since a lot of times when you see a Trundle opt in for that, they are basically saying, I'm going to 1v9 this game. PTA gives a lot more utility in team value and getting that damage amp for anyone that is hitting onto the marked target here, as Hope, looking at a marked target himself, trying to get a lot of priority by forcing a lot of damage into Light's health bar. Good pillar onto Chris, forced to pop the ultimate. Tian tries to knock up Tarzan. Keeper's verdict for the windup, punts away Xiaohu. Now it's a created numbers advantage, and Chris is in trouble, forced to flash away before Hope finishes him off. And this guarantees that AL have control of the topside river.
Yeah, and that's, really great timing as well for them. They're able to just walk in. Now they'll be able to take a couple of plates, hopefully one top, one mid, and at the very least find themselves some good resets and get an experience advantage generated even further. But it's just a little bit of a glimpse here of what AL can do using this Poppy. I mean, Kael, the unfortunate reason that they lost their series versus T1 was a Kael Poppy game. So this is a bit of a redemption as well for him, because he had a couple of chokes, had a couple of blunders in those massively important moments. He needs to show that that was just, the international stage nerves, that actually, domestically he can still be the best support that we have in the LPL.
Yeah. It was, I believe, his first international tournament that he had been able to attend, since the only other team that he had been able to play for before Anyone's Legend was Live Sandbox, and that team almost had a chance to go to Worlds, but that was also the same year that DRX made the Miracle Run, if I am not mistaken. So, just unfortunate circumstances that eventually led to the rise of Deft and what could have been Kael and Prince at a world championship there. But for Anyone's Legend, I have faith in Kael to put out banger Poppy performances, because we saw them in Split 1 and Split 2. Some of our, big TikTok highlights from the LPL main account has put out some bangers, including Kael's Poppy, so I have faith that he will be able to continue that performance in this game today. We're 2 minutes away from the next Dragon Spawn here, Rude. I imagine with a lot of these first item spikes coming online for AL relatively quickly, that should be something that should be easily able to contest Weibo on.
Absolutely, and looking at where we are expecting to see those fights happen, you've already highlighted it's going to be down on that bot side, but for the contest as well, I think that both these sides want to be setting up nice and early, and you can see Weibo the ones doing that already. Kael, Spidey senses were tingling there, early ward popped into the tri-brush, and one's going to stick, but it's going to force a sweeper from Tian. And now you'd like to see Kael, well, I've used all of my wards, I need to recall again and refresh those, but a player who so far in 2025 has had a very, very stellar record, very good performances over the majority of this year, and looking at how well that growth and development can continue to go, because he is a player who we're looking at that growth and development and wasn't expecting him to come immediately into the LPL and be the best support. Seems like that's what he's done, and in this new age of LPL where we don't really have any of those incredibly powerful support players like we used to, right? Mako's not hitting the same, On's not hitting the same anymore, and we need to see some new age, new guard supports come through. Kael making the statement that he can be one of them.
Yeah, even the most dominant support in 2023 with that JDG roster was missing, right? And he has now just taken a step down from, I'm not sure if competitive play in general, but at least not on JDG roster for the future, and now replaced by Wink. So this is an opportunity for Kael to continue establishing himself as the #1 support in the LPL, which I feel like he did a pretty damn good job convincing everyone in Split 2. So, Anyone's Legend continuing to operate with a lot of individuals, very talented, who should be gunning for #1 in their positions. And as we look forward into the game, second dragon has spawned. So far, Weibo is actually the first team to at least arrive to the Dragon Pit, but the rest of Anyone's Legend trying to get some aggressive vision and get ready to contest them on it.
And again, engages for AL are pretty easy. They can just send Flandre into the midst of everybody and hopefully with the ball on top try and find a shockwave as well. But when we look at the blocking capabilities for Weibo as well, Crisp should just be looking to find Sion, stand in front and then tank it ult for ult, and hopefully those trades will end up being, you know, beneficial for Weibo in those situations, but they see Chris.
Oh no, and look at that, the Poppy Trundle Pillar combo works so beautifully. Chris cannot even escape, even with the power of that unbreakable will, damage reduction on top of it. Now that's just a guaranteed objective for anyone's legend.
Yeah, nom 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 here. Tarzan 3-0 chomping down on his enemies, and this is the third person he's been able to take down as Kael dodges out on that, sidesteps. Xiaohu flashes out over the wall. Necessary here, would have had to have gone the long way around a pillar, and knows that with that heroic charge sat there waiting. This Poppy Trundle combo, I mean, one of the benefits that AL were leveraging so frequently in Split 2 was their synergy between Tarzan and Kael, and the link-ups they were able to find were so frequently instrumental in AL's victories, and it's good to see that that is still going to happen.
Yeah. A teleport from Shanks towards the bottom side of the map signals that anyone's legend will not even try and contest Weibo on this Rift Herald. They're just going to use the power of those 3 grubs they got earlier and look for the first brick of the game right on this bottom side of the map.
Yeah, I mean, this is gone, right? Like, this is Trundle trying to take turrets. Does it very easily. This is also looking at the power of 3 grubs plus the Trinity Force. They're absolutely fine to try and take this trade. Now, Rift Herald is probably going to get summoned, but they're looking to collapse here.
He's sending it. He knows that Weibo were trying to get a turret back in the mid lane. Great unstoppable onslaught right onto Light. Able to distance himself away, but here comes the rest of the onslaught.
Triple shove.
Weibo, big seismic shove, but Keeper's Verdict winds up and punts away one member. Shockwave is flashed by Breathe, but Tian is left isolated. And that means anyone's legend gets their kill that they were looking for and completely neutralizes the Rift Herald play.
It's a very close fight, and in fairness, Xiaohu here in this one had a very nice seismic shove, triple flick, made it a very close round thing, but a Keeper's Verdict from Kael made the fight just barely winnable, and Tian the only deficit that Weibo find for themselves. They also lose out on a lot of control of that mid lane as well, and just look at the damage that comes through from this Scion early on. Pops the shield, 1 auto ulti plus W pop takes Light to 30% HP, and this triple flick from Xiaohu you think might have turned the fight, but Kael flashes into the front line, sends the Sivir away so that consistent DPS is no longer available, and then separates out the rest of Weibo. There's nobody in that mid-range to buy space for the backline to get in, and there's nobody that can protect Tian as he ends up falling once more.
Yeah, and for Weibo's sake, they did end up getting the tier 1 turret in the mid lane, but look how far behind they are in gold now. Anyone's legend starting to really snowball and accelerate the pace of this game. And we talked about before how much harder it is going to get for Weibo as the game progresses, with this Scion getting beefier and beefier, and no real ways for Weibo to reliably shred through the armor until they get to those Black Cleaver power spikes, as Light might be in trouble here. No flash from the prior fight. Hope just annihilated him.
Missed every rocket, did not matter. He was using them for Sheen procs, baby. He just finds a nice quick kill onto Light, who has no summoner spells, took a greedy path back to mid lane, and was completely spotted on his way back. So, Light getting picked out there. A pretty uncharacteristic death, but one that he cannot afford all the while. Crisp now, forced to ult.
Seismic shove on the Tarzan, but he's so damn tanky thanks to the use of the Subjugate, and the Great Pillar forces Tian to be in a bad spot and gets chomped down to bits. Xiaohu, almost at 50% HP, has to give ground over to anyone's legend out of respect and just making sure that he can preserve his life. They will hold on to the tier 1 turret for now, but anyone's legend just continuing to pick up free kills left, right, and center.
Yeah, and what I love is the fact that Light is actually just kind of going or getting picked off first of all, but it's by Hope, who's going crazy with the Corki. He's just Wing forward into the face of Talia, into the face of Sivir, into the face of his Xin Zhao, dashing into the Crescent Guard so that he can do as much damage as possible and really make Tian regret that he ever stepped so close to this Corki in the first place. And he's 2-0-2 right now, and you know, piggybacking very nicely off of the lead that Tarzan found.
Yeah. And it's just anyone's legend making effective use of the strong Trinity Force power spikes that they have between both the Trundle and the Corki. And this has all been happening before Hope had even cashed in on a Monomune that has been stacking. It was just a Trinity Force plus tier, but because he's been so strong and he's been so accelerated ahead of the curve of the game, he is using that for pressure to just continue leveraging that snowball and slowly ballooning the gold lead. What once was just 2,000, 3,000, now effectively a 4,000 gold lead, and they're looking for more. Breathe, using public execution to reposition so he can get into the tri-bush. The pillar's not as deceptive as it could have been, but Breathe's still gonna get run down anyway because Tarzan is just too damn fast.
Yeah, again, like this Trundle is a carry, folks. Like this B1 Trundle is proving why it got picked up so early on. With 5-0 and 1 now the scoreline, that Trinity Force at their back. And even with it just being PTA, this isn't, like you say, the 1v9 lethal tempo Super Trundle that we were looking for. But this is Tarzan just being right place, right time, and also having an insane amount of gold to be able to do that with. He's now, I think that when you're ahead, going for these tanky options is actually even more beneficial because you can continuously be a little bit further ahead of the curve and then also sustain yourself in the front line. The fact that he's gone for a Spirit Visage first up against triple AD threats is low-key pretty disrespectful, to be honest. And I breathe Tian all light looking at this. I'm like, oh, Trundle's built butter for me, but he still just kills me. What's happening?
And they get the wall slam right on top of Tian, so now there's no smite contest coming in anytime soon from Weibo Gaming unless Chris can swap to it with his unsealed spellbook, but it's going to be a tough task to be able to pull off, and Weibo, down in man, have no means necessary to be able to really steal this Otacon away from anyone's legend, so this objective, once again, free in the hands of anyone's legend, and they can easily go for the next dragon of the game as well.
Yeah, I do like this from Xiaohu as he weavers walled up to the top side to try and make something happen during this time. So he's going to be able to take the tier 1 turret on that top side and get a little bit of gold back for himself. But again, we look at this in the grand scheme of things. This is a very thin silver lining across an absolute storm of clouds that are hanging overhead for Weibo. Down 4,000 gold, tier 1 turrets falling on side lanes, now collapsing in mid lane as well. When your Sivir can't wave clear again, just speaks to the pretty shocking state of affairs that you're currently finding yourself in.
Yeah, this is tough. You are trying to pray for the team on the other side to like slow things down so that you can slowly scale on up and get to that 4 or 5 item Sivir late game dream where you can just start annihilating people, as I think Jackie Love best demonstrated in one of the top esports games. Might be a potential pickoff here for Weibo as Breathe already jumps onto Flandre with that public execution. Xiaohu will gonna try to stop him, but Flandre picks a nice angle for the unstoppable onslaught, and he's just gonna send it into the base. And all right, well, I guess we'll give the kill over to Light potentially here. Flandre is just going to try and stall for as much time as possible. And you know what? He's doing a pretty darn good job of doing that because the rest of anyone's legend is pushing up waves on the top side. They're taking a turret in the mid lane, or at least prepping for it.
Tian, you need to help this guy.
Other minion wave, and he's getting another minion wave too. Flandre is so goated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that he had to resign himself to death there. I think that he could have maybe tried to run, get a little bit of help from his team, and now AL maybe in a little bit of trouble with the Weaver's Wall.
Okay, Tarzan forced to flash over that one. Doesn't want to drop the shutdown bounty. Kael might be in a sticky situation as well. Already used the Keeper's Verdict. They've got a blast cone, and boom, he's out of there. All
right, as long as they only lose one, realistically, it's not that big a deal. Flandre, no kills, probably a relatively low shutdown on his head, so giving that over to Light, it's not good, but it's probably not going to lose them the game. The fact that they've done this, if they continue to feed those shutdowns into the Sivir again, I do want to highlight that as we move later on, I do value the composition that Weibo have, and as much as it was comical watching Light try to kill the Scion in that instance, I think once we reach Mortal Reminder or Lord Doms and once we reach the Infinity Edge, the Sivir will be able to do work. Unfortunately, she needs to get past the point of the game where Hope just does that to her.
Now Muramana fully stacked up means that this Corki is pumping out tons of damage right now. Does anyone's legend continue to press their advantage forward? The gold lead hasn't really ballooned or increased further, so Weibo have done a decent job of trying to at least stagnate the deficit that they've been dealing with, but the game doesn't feel any better.
No.
This state where we're about a minute and a half away from the Baron spawning. Anyone's legend seem to be in full control of this top side as a shockwave from Shanks does pull in Breathe for a little bit of burst damage. Not enough to kill him or finish him off, but maybe enough to push him off the safety of this turret.
And I will say as well that what I actually really enjoy about AL is the fact that Hope also seems to be very happy to sit with Kael. That's the second time where we've seen Hope just sort of stand on top of his support, and the second we see Kael get engaged on, or that he starts to find somebody who's a little bit out of position, Hope's right there to at least put down a little bit more damage. And you know, immediately, if a jungler face checks a support, they might entertain it a little bit, but when it's an AD carry and a support, they are immediately turning tail and running.
Yeah. 30 seconds away from this Baron spawning Roodood. I imagine if AL just want to continue making this game very fast-paced, they can just easily start it right on spawn. They have a window where there'll still be another minute before the dragon spawns. Tarzan might be caught out here. Remember, he already used Flash for the other Weaver's Wall pickoff, and this could be really big. Unstoppable onslaught from Flandre tries to stall the fight as long as possible. It's a big shutdown and goes into the pockets of light. Shanks trying to flank with this shockwave. Still hasn't pulled the trigger quite yet. Kael gets dropped by Tian. Weibo trying to pull a miracle. The shockwave only catches one on the Xiaohu, but doesn't drop him. And Hope cannot get into this fight. He's trying to play around Shanks' range, but the rest of Weibo Gaming are playing with absolute fire. But Hope blows up crisp, and now looking to turn tail onto Xiaohu. Everyone is so low. Hope has to go forward, but he's baited in by Weibo.
Is he doing it?
And he drops light as well. Xiaohu, the only survivor, but anyone's legend star AD carry is putting the fear into the hearts of Weibo.
And this is the power of that 2-item Corki. He comes alive in the skirmish and is able to rescue the victory from the jaws of defeat there. Weibo had such a good opening to the start of this fight. It looked for all the world like they were going to just steamroll that skirmish, but the Corki comes back. A working duo of those carries from AL manages to turn the fight around. And the Tarzan here, this is the power of having 5 kills and so much gold, is he stalls for so long between Subjugate, between the tanks, between the Locket coming through. He's just tanky enough to give time. And yes, Kael is also going to fall, and Hope here free hitting onto Tian, but the rest of the carries on Weibo are actually doing pretty darn well. But it's Hope this entire time, constantly buying space, and again recognizing that actually getting knocked up here, not the worst thing in the world. He still had space and used his flash appropriately. A sidestep onto the seismic shove. Going back again, spacing away from Breathe, knowing that he needs to get that little bit of distance. And Shanks as well, it's worth saying, he's on 200 HP here this entire fight. Does he recall? No. He knows he's safe, so he's able to just sit back, provide that little bit of support, use the ball from the Orianna, and keep everybody alive.
The evolution of Hope over the course of this 2025 season has been one of the greatest joys of becoming an Anyone's Legend fan, and just watching this team blossom into now the defending champions of LPL. I think in the past, Hope has been, met with criticism where he has been more a role player AD carry and just kind of doing his job, never really playing the limits or the aggressive line that we now see in these moments. Normally, I've really seen it on the Lucian or the Kaisa. Now he's showing it on the Corki as well. And these are the types of performances, these are the types of limits you have to push when come international, you are playing against the very best in the world.
And a reminder for people that, maybe not so familiar with Hope's journey or don't know his legacy as one of these AD carries, I'd say. He was a player who would so frequently get replaced by the best, right? This was a player that got taken off of JDG because they could get pays. He was a player that got replaced by Ruler as well at a certain point in his career. Like, he was an AD carry who was always incredibly well sought after, but just not that top tier. And now Weibo, though, they're looking to fight once again.
Kael winding up the hammer for the keeper's verdict, punts away one as they slam Tian into the wall. The Crescent Guard not going to be able to block as much damage because they're all right on top of him. Breathe rejoins the fight. Chris trying to do as much as he can, but the shockwave is great. It catches light and Crisp in the folly. And Weibo are now running for their lives. Xiaohu tries to distance himself away with the Weaver's Wall and trying to kite as he throws rock after rock, but those rocks ain't doing shit as Anyone's Legend wipe the floor with Weibo Gaming, and they push in for the base win.
Clean ace. Game number 1 goes to AL. Weibo tried as they might. They fought back in this game, but they weren't able to do the work. A great keeper's verdict from Kael, and now they'll do the victory march.
AL had a lot to say after their loss against BLG last night, and the way they are stomping Weibo in this first game leaves a lot for promising in the series to come. AL lead the series 1-0.
And that was the maybe a little bit of the expectation, at least for me coming into this. I'd like to see AL bounce back, even though they had a pretty rough game or day number 1. Right, they had a really tricky spot where they lost to BLG against the run of things. But now they're coming up against Weibo and Tarzan. The early game was absolutely insane. 5-0-1 on this Trundle, running an absolute muck across Weibo's jungle. And a really solid bounce back from them. They need to do it again, though. We saw this from them yesterday, where they took game number 1. It looked convincing, but then ended up losing the series. So let's see, AL, can we see some of those adaptations, some of those improvements from day to day, and get you a series win on the board as well?
Impressive stuff from Anyone's Legend across the board, and I think it was cool to see Weibo finally throw down the gauntlet and say, all right, guys, we can't just keep getting beaten down and rolled over in these 20-25 minutes. We have to do something, and it was a good sequence of plays to capitalize on. First, burning flashes from a lot of the members that had big shutdown bounties. Looking at Tarzan in particular, they were able to recapitalize and follow up on that flash burn relatively quickly. Got the big shutdown, but this was a big hope performance to step up when needed most. And those are the types of challenges that are good to experience here in the regular season, because when it comes to those playoff stakes situations and scenarios where it could literally mean the difference between advancing to Worlds qualification or, you know, being short of a title run again here for Anyone's Legend. And we cannot state enough here, Root, how exciting it is for Hope to be the clutch playmaker, the big star carry in these scenarios.
Yeah, and in a game like this as well, it's one of those where you kind of need your team to falter a little bit. Like Tarzan had put the shoes on Weibo, like absolutely running them around the rift. But until the point where actually Tarzan steps a little too far forward, gets caught out, Hope didn't have the opportunity to stand up and shine in that spotlight like he did in the back end of that game. Yes, we got to see a couple of picks where he's hopping over the wall on the Corki and he's looking with good aggression, and that just felt like in the run of the game, that felt natural. But when the tide starts to turn against you and you're able to actually push back against them, that's the really important part, and that's where you get to see actual clutch performances be important.
I think that moment alone is what is going to be the difference in what could have been a Tarzan MVP for this game to now what should definitively be a Hope MVP for game 1.
Yeah, absolutely. It really just stands to reason. I think that Kael actually, you know, a little bit of a redemption story for his Poppy. He had some pretty, like I say, the reason that they lost that game number 5 versus T1 at MSI in the lower finals was because of a couple of Kael chokes on this Poppy, but getting to pull it back out here in regular season, yes, lower caliber opponents, but getting a really solid performance on this as well. Good to sort of put those nerves aside and make sure that he's back in the contest with being the best of the best in the bot lane.
And rolling through the highlights, once again, it really was a clinical early game from Tarzan. That 2v2 was so detrimental to Tian's own desire to set the pace of the game for himself on this Xin Zhao, and it kind of does just go back to the draft of why teams are prioritizing Trundle now over Xin. There used to be a while in this early AD skirmisher meta where it was Vi, Xin, Nefiri. Then Nefiri fell ways once she got nerfed over and over for Pantheon. But still, a lot of people felt like, well, Xin can still kind of be the king of skirmishing once the Pantheon is gone. And then suddenly people remember, wait, Trundle exists.
Monkey remembers Trundle exists.
Monkey remembers Trundle. And then everyone Trundle kind of just reigns supreme on the map in terms of early AD skirmishers, just because he stat checks everyone. He can pretty much disincentivize a team from ever picking a tank because he's just going to make them pretty much removed from the game with the subjugate. And even though he doesn't have strong engage tools, he has great pick tools with well-placed pillars. So that was fully on display here from Tarzan.
Yeah, and I mean, we got to see some of the power that the Trundle has, and I do think that the fact that Trundle is taking precedence over Talia as that B1 pick sort of, again, is very, very important and speaks to the power that this Trundle does have, because previously Talia had been thought of and sort of lusted after as this be-all and end-all B1 control mage in the mid lane. Unfortunately, you know, this time round, AL were happy to give it up, and they were happy to beat it as well.
Yeah. I'm just saying, Rude, I'm hoping Kindred gets some buffs, because right now, she is not strong enough that by herself, you can just slam a Kindred in response once you see the Trundle picked, because in prior metas, that was a good response because you could always kite out the Trundle, you could at least skirmish better because you are ranged right, and you can always hop away from the dangers of the pillar. Unfortunately, the meta doesn't really facilitate her as well. Things like lane swaps does put her in a position where she gets really crippled if she's not able to get access to those Kindred marks earlier on in the game, and you really do need, if you don't have a strong 80 skirmisher in the jungle and Kindred doesn't get snowballed, then you just provide nothing. And as we predicted, Rude, Hope with the MVP on the Corki, 8-0-5. Applause.
A solid performance. Yeah, applause all around. Had a very solid game, number one, and hopefully we can see that continue as well. The development of Hope, as we've already highlighted, has been really, really solid through this year, and it's good to see that continue.
Yep. Well, with that being said, Game 1 is wrapped up and in the books. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, it's going to be Game 2. Match point on the line for anyone's legend or potential redemption arc for Weibo. We'll see you right after.